Hello, my name is Matisse Cavodi. I'd like to welcome you guys to my channel. Today we're going to talk about the history of comic books, more specifically the origins of Marvel Comics. And it's going to be the first in a series of videos that I'm going to dedicate to the subject. Not only I'm going to work with Marvel, I'm going to touch on some other comic book editorials, especially share stories with you guys that maybe I haven't seen done a million times on other YouTube channels. And in this particular video, we're going to talk about the creation of Marvel's two first superheroes, Namor the Submariner and the original Human Torch, and the respective creators to these fantastic characters that at least I really love a lot. Sort of funny, at the moment I want to record, every single truck and airplane fly is blasting right next to my house. But let's go back to the 1930s. We have an individual, a fundamental person to the history of comic books. His name is Lloyd Jaquette. He's working for a company called Centaur Comics. He wants to break away, and when he does this, he actually takes two artists with him, Bill Everett and Carlburgos. And what he wants to do is create his own stories, sell them to publishers, and advantage of the trend that superhero comics were just basically killing it from the first moment. We had the first appearance of Superman in Action Comics #1. Superhero comics were selling very, very well. So the two people I mentioned, Bill Everett, he's the creator of Namor. A pretty hardcore character. Like, he goes on pretty much a revenge trip against the surface world, attacking humans left and right, attacking sailors, attacking pilots, anything that harms his beloved underwater realm. At one moment, because I'm working off a couple of books, one of the books dedicated to the history of comics mentions that Namor is sort of like an anti-Superman. The dude is profoundly violent, he's reactionary, and basically, he's the first anti-hero with all what that conveys. Then we have Carlburgos, creates the Human Torch. That the first Human Torch story sort of has this horror sci-fi angle to it. You know how to control his powers at first. He scares the shit out of everyone that sees him. Basically, he's like an experiment that's gone wrong. And later on, he's going to learn how to be a hero, and he's going to fight for good. And in way further down the line, both of these characters are going to cross paths, because obviously the idea behind both of these characters is fire and water. I'm sort of getting ahead of myself. So, what happened? Bill and Carl create these two characters for Mr. Lloyd Jaquette, and Lloyd actually is able to strip called Motion Picture Funnies. Oh, I forgot to mention, Lloyd Jaquette's company, the first company that he creates to sell these characters, is called Funnies Incorporated. So that's like something pretty relevant that I just blew over. So let's get back to Motion Picture Funnies. He sells Namor's and Human Torch's comic strips to this comic book that was given away at movie theaters. They would put serialized stories, like each week you get a part of a story, to get kids going back to the movies once a week. Get these free comic books, and it's actually a pretty smart idea. But the thing is, Motion Pictures Funnies never hits the presses, and only saw a couple were sent to the owners of the theaters. So I can only imagine if any of those samples still exist, what they're worth. What happens with Lloyd, he has these stories that are made. He actually contacts a friend of his named Frank Torpy. He's a sales agent, and he has connections to a person, his name is Martin Goodman, who basically is going to be the future owner of Marvel Comics. He's in the publishing business. He's been in it for a while. He's always chased what's hot, what's the fad in any of his publications. He does has a history in publishing pulp magazines, which pulp, for those who don't know, pulp magazines are sort of like the grandfather to comic books. Pulp characters end up in further down the line in superhero comic books. So Frank convinces Martin Goodman it's a fantastic idea to use these characters. They add a couple more in the first edition of Marvel Comics #1. So you had Namor, the original Human Torch, a character called Angel, Kazar, who was originally a pulp character. Then he's gonna find he's gonna reappear way down the line in the X-Men comic books, and he's gonna be running around in Savage Land. But it's not the same character. They're called the Masked Raider. And while I was writing this, I realized I actually never read a original Marvel Comics #1. I've seen it one or two times in recompilation comic books, but I've sat down to read it. So I have to find that at my local comic book shop. So the cover, Human Torch is escaping from that glass vial that he was in. It has a very pulp feeling to it because actually the guy that did it had a history of illustrating pulp covers. So Marvel Comics #1 comes out in August, the 31st of August of 1939. It sold out 80,000 copies, completely sold out. Martin Goodman is completely surprised. They throw out a second edition of 800 numbers. Also sold very well. I can't say it sold out because it doesn't say that in the text, but I guess it sold very well. And it's pretty much a milestone for the origins of Marvel Comics. And if for some reason in the second issue they decided to call it Marvel Mystery Comics, they just couldn't leave the name alone. It's sort of like a tradition with Martin Goodman that he would always change up the name of the editorial and stuff like that. Well, the interesting thing is that Bill Everett, after the creation of Namor, he has to go to the Second World War. People that were working in the comic book industry and also obviously in Marvel Comics. And he actually he served in Europe and in the Pacific. Returned, he went back to working on comic books. He worked on a character called Venus, later on the character called Marvel Boy. The most important character after Namor that he created was Daredevil. On the series very long, but in the first couple of issues you actually do have Daredevil fighting against Namor, so that's like a sort of interesting to Bill Everett. And then we have Carlburgos, who actually I was surprised his name was actually Mike Finkenstein, sorry. Served in the U.S. military. When he returned to the United States, he went to college to study advertising. He would work on and off in the comic book industry, but he didn't do anything too relevant. And during the Silver Age, he actually sued Marvel over use of the character of the Human Torch. Then we had the new Human Torch that was created for the Fantastic Four. I guess this really rubbed him the wrong way too. But that's actually a story for another day because there's a lot of coming and going on that particular issue. I think it's worth diving deeper. So I'm going to leave this video here. I hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time. Bye.